Humanity had spread across the stars like a wildfire, yet in the grand scheme of the galaxy, they were still newcomers. Their success was not built on centuries of ancient wisdom or alien ingenuity, but on one simple fact: they adapted. And now, as the galaxy's most fearsome threat loomed over them, it was this unique ability that had brought them to the attention of the Galactic Empire. The call had come through the Empire's military broadcast, cold and clinical, offering a chance to end the war that had plagued the galaxy for generations. The Zorvok, an ancient species of brutal conquerors, had successfully repelled every assault, their homeworld a nearly impenetrable fortress surrounded by a deadly environment. The Galactic Empire had failed, yet they saw something in humanity, something they couldn't ignore, a job like no other, the deadliest job in the galaxy. Jack Donovan, a seasoned war hero and one of Earth's finest military minds, sat in the quiet of the war room, staring at the blinking message. His fingers drummed against the table, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen. The Empire's recruitment officer had spoken plainly. The mission was clear. Enter Zorvok Prime, infiltrate their stronghold, disable their weapons, and stop their reign of terror. Success meant survival, failure meant extinction. No one else had even come close to succeeding. What do you think? Vic Harris's voice broke through the silence. His arms crossed over his chest as he leaned against the doorway. Jack didn't answer right away. The mission was a suicide mission. Of that much he was certain. But something about it felt right. If there was one thing Jack had learned over the years, it was that impossible odds weren't something to fear. They were a challenge. And humanity thrived on challenges. He turned to face Vic, his expression unreadable. "Do we have a choice?" Jack asked, his voice low. Vic grinned, and for a moment, the weight of the mission seemed to lift. He was the kind of guy who could find humor in any situation, even the most dangerous ones. A genius when it came to machinery. Vic had a knack for making the impossible happen. If anyone could figure out how to survive the Zorvok's technology, it was him. "You're right. Let's sign up," Vic said with a chuckle, pushing himself off the wall. And just like that, Jack's decision was made. It wasn't a choice. It was an instinct. The two men walked out of the war room, heading toward the hangar where the rest of the team was waiting. They'd need every edge they could get to survive what lay ahead. And in this mission, every person brought something crucial to the table. Carl Simmons, or Cannon as they called him, was already sitting in the cockpit of a training shuttle, running through a series of complex simulations. His massive frame filled the seat, but there was a calmness in his eyes. Like Jack, Carl had been on more than one impossible mission, and each time, he'd emerged victorious. His combat skills were unmatched, and his presence alone was enough to intimidate any opponent. He was the kind of soldier who would charge into the heart of a battlefield without hesitation and never flinch. "You guys ready for this?" Carl asked without looking up from his screen, his voice deep and steady. Vic raised an eyebrow. "As ready as we'll ever be, I guess." Carl gave a slight nod, then turned his attention to Jack. "You know, Jack, we've got a hell of a mission on our hands. We're going up against the oldest empire in the galaxy, and they've never been beaten. What makes you think we're any different?" Jack smiled slightly, the edge of a challenge in his voice. "Because we're human, Carl, and we've got something they don't." Before Carl could respond, a voice came through the comm system, smooth and professional. It was Luke Ace Mitchell, the team's pilot, always calm under pressure and the best when it came to maneuvering through hostile space. He had the instincts of a hawk, always aware of his surroundings. When he flew, it was like the entire world bent to his will. "Jack, Vic, Carl, get your gear. We leave in 20. The Empire wants us to get in and out quickly. No room for error." "Understood," Jack replied, tapping the comm panel on his wrist. He turned to Carl. "We've got our orders. Let's make sure we're ready." The final leg of their preparations was underway. They suited up, outfitted with cutting-edge equipment, though it was clear that the technology wouldn't be enough on its own. They needed ingenuity. They needed their minds to work together in ways they hadn't before. Luke met them at the ship, a sleek transport vessel capable of stealth entry into hostile zones. His eyes gleamed with the familiar glint of a man who relished the thrill of a challenge. "You've got a great view of the Zorvok homeworld, gentlemen," Luke said as he motioned to the viewport, where the swirling mass of clouds and deadly storms that surrounded the planet loomed ominously. "But I wouldn't get too attached to it. We've got work to do." As the ship entered the Zorvok system, the reality of their mission hit. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and entering the heart of a hostile world that had never been touched by a foreign force. The odds of survival were slim, but that didn't matter. Not to them. Once on the surface, Jack wasted no time. The Zorvok's planetary defenses were a maze of traps and obstacles, but Vic's mind worked quickly, adjusting their gear for the strange environment. With every challenge they faced, be it the deadly fauna or the toxic rain, Jack led them with calm precision. Carl's strength helped clear the way when brute force was necessary, and Luke's piloting skills ensured they had a safe retreat. But as they ventured deeper into the heart of Zorvok territory, it became clear that this was no ordinary mission. They were about to face an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered, one that would test them in ways they couldn't anticipate. And that was when the first Zorvok patrol appeared, their hulking figures silhouetted against the dark sky. A voice crackled over their comm system. "It's time to see if we're truly ready." Jack's hand tightened around the weapon at his side. The mission had begun, and there was no turning back. The acrid stench of the air on Zorvok Prime was the first thing that struck them. It clung to their suits, a sulphurous reminder that this planet wasn't meant for human life. Jack scanned the horizon, his visor's HUD displaying a jagged landscape of molten rivers and towering black spires that seemed to claw at the swirling, storm-laden sky. The terrain was as hostile as the Zorvok themselves, but it wasn't the planet's wrath that concerned him most. It was the patrols. Vic adjusted his breathing apparatus, his hands deftly recalibrating the filters. "This air's corrosive," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "If these filters don't hold, we'll be choking on acid fumes in minutes." "They'll hold," Jack said, his tone firm. "They have to." Carl stood a few steps ahead, his massive frame a silhouette against the flickering light of a distant lava flow. He scanned the jagged horizon, his grip tightening on his plasma rifle. "I don't like how quiet it is. Feels like we're walking into a trap." "We are," Jack replied. "That's why we stay sharp." The team moved in a tight formation, every step calculated to avoid the pulsating alien flora that dotted the landscape. Each plant seemed alive, its movements subtle but deliberate, as though sensing their presence. Vic paused to study one, his curiosity briefly overtaking caution. The plant's tendrils twitched, emitting a faint hum. "Careful!" Luke's voice came through the comms from above. He piloted the stolen Zorvok fighter, providing aerial surveillance. "Those things are more than decoration. I'm seeing heat signatures near their roots." "Noted," Vic said, stepping back. "Guess we'll add killer plants to the list of things trying to kill us." "Focus up," Jack ordered. "We've got bigger problems." As if on cue, Luke's voice crackled through again, more urgent this time. "Patrol incoming. 10 clicks north and closing fast. Looks like a squad of 6. No, 8. Engage or evade?" Carl asked, his tone almost eager. Jack considered their options. They'd spent the last 3 days navigating this hellscape, avoiding conflict wherever possible. But the Zorvok were relentless hunters. Evading now might mean a larger force later. Engage, Jack decided. Vic set up a distraction. "Carl, take point. Luke, give us Overwatch." The team sprang into action, their movements seamless, a product of years of training and trust. Vic crouched by a cluster of alien shrubs, his fingers working quickly to rig an improvised explosive from a handful of stolen Zorvok tech. "This'll give them something to think about," he said, planting the device before retreating to cover. Carl positioned himself at a choke point, his plasma rifle aimed at the approach path. His breathing slowed, his focus sharpening. "Let's see what these bastards are made of." The Zorvok patrol appeared moments later, their towering forms moving with eerie precision. Each soldier was clad in angular black armor, their weapons glowing with a sickly green light. They communicated silently, their movements coordinated like a pack of wolves. The explosion hit first, a blinding flash of light and heat that sent 2 of the Zorvok flying. The remaining 6 scattered, their formation briefly disrupted. That was all the opening Carl needed. He unleashed a torrent of plasma fire, each shot landing with deadly accuracy. The Zorvok adapted quickly, returning fire with their own brutal efficiency. Their weapons screamed through the air, carving molten paths into the ground. Jack signaled for Vic to flank while he laid down suppressive fire, his shots precise and controlled. From above, Luke guided the team with a steady voice. 3 on the left, regrouping. Carl, 2 incoming from your 6. Jack, watch your flank. Carl spun just in time, his rifle stock connecting with the jaw of a Zorvok soldier who had gotten too close. The alien staggered, and Carl finished it with a point-blank shot. "Thanks for the heads-up," he muttered, reloading in one fluid motion. Meanwhile, Vic had circled behind the remaining Zorvok, his engineering expertise turning their own weapons against them. He activated a hacked drone, sending it hurtling toward the enemy before detonating it in a fiery blast. The last 2 soldiers fell, their armor smoking. "Clear," Jack said, scanning the area. "Everyone okay?" "Peachy," Vic replied, brushing dust off his suit. "Though I'd love to know how they spotted us so quickly." "They didn't," Luke interjected. "They were already patrolling this area. We're getting close to something important." Jack nodded. "Then we keep moving. The closer we get, the harder they'll hit." The team pressed on, navigating through increasingly hostile terrain. The air grew thicker, the ground more unstable. Vic's scanners picked up signs of seismic activity, and Jack could feel the heat rising through his boots. "What's that?" Carl asked, pointing to a structure in the distance. It loomed on the horizon, a spire of twisted metal and alien stone. The Zorvok stronghold. Jack's gut tightened. They were walking into the lion's den, and the lions were already circling. "Luke, what's the status on that stronghold?" he asked. "Massive energy readings," Luke replied. "Whatever they're powering in there, it's big and bad." "Then that's our target," Jack said. "Vic, start thinking about how we're going to take it down. Carl, you're with me. Luke, stay sharp. If they've got air support, we'll need you." As they closed in on the stronghold, the team's resolve hardened. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were here to end the Zorvok threat once and for all. The comm crackled again, Luke's voice cutting through the tense silence. "Jack, we've got movement. Bigger force this time. And they know you're coming." Jack's grip tightened on his weapon. "Good. Let them come." The stronghold loomed larger with each step, a menacing reminder of the challenge ahead. But the team didn't falter. They were human, and they thrived where others fell. The Zorvok stronghold rose like a monolithic blade, its sharp edges gleaming with an eerie green light that pulsed in rhythm with the planet's faint tremors. Jack crouched behind a jagged outcrop of obsidian rock, surveying the fortress through his visor. The structure's defenses bristled with alien weaponry, their power levels displayed on his HUD. Each pulse was a reminder of how easily the Zorvok could obliterate them if they made one wrong move. "We're out of time," Luke's voice crackled over the comms. He was still circling in the stolen fighter, dodging sporadic anti-air bursts. "They're locking onto my position. I can't give you much more cover." "Understood," Jack replied. He turned to Vic, who was frantically assembling a device from salvaged Zorvok components. "How's that override coming?" Vic didn't look up, his hands moving with practiced precision. "Almost there. This thing should disrupt their perimeter defenses for a few minutes, but that's all I can guarantee." "That's all we need," Jack said. He glanced at Carl, who stood nearby, his rifle cradled in his massive hands. "Once the defenses drop, we move fast. No hesitation." Carl nodded, his expression grim but resolute. "I've got your back." Vic snapped the final piece into place and grinned, ready to make some noise. The device emitted a low hum as Vic activated it, sending out a wave of electromagnetic energy. The stronghold's defenses flickered, the green lights dimming momentarily before stabilizing at a lower intensity. Jack didn't wait for confirmation. He signaled the advance, and the team moved as one, slipping through the weakened perimeter. Inside the stronghold, the air was stifling, filled with the hum of alien machinery and the distant clang of Zorvok patrols. The walls seemed to close in around them, their surface alive with shifting patterns that gave the unsettling impression of being watched. "This place is a fortress," Carl muttered, his voice low. "How are we supposed to find the core in this maze?" "We follow the energy readings," Vic said, holding up a handheld scanner. "The power source has to be centralized. I've got a strong signal down this corridor." Jack led the way, his weapon at the ready. Every step was deliberate, every corner approached with caution. The Zorvot didn't rely on traditional guards alone. The stronghold was riddled with traps, from pressure-activated turrets to rooms that sealed shut at the faintest disturbance. "Hold up," Vic whispered, stopping suddenly. He pointed to a section of the floor where faint grooves intersected in a grid pattern. "Tripwire system. One wrong step, and we're fried." Carl knelt beside him, studying the pattern. "Can you disable it?" Vic smirked. "Give me 30 seconds. True to his word, Vic disarmed the trap, and the team pressed on. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The stronghold felt alive, a living organism that reacted to their intrusion. "Jack," Luke's voice came through the comms, strained. "You've got incoming reinforcements. Multiple hostiles converging on your location. I'll try to slow them down, but they're deploying fighters. I'm running out of time." "Do what you can, Luke," Jack replied. "We'll handle the rest." They emerged into a vast chamber, its center dominated by a pulsating crystalline structure that emitted a blinding green light. The core. It was protected by an intricate array of barriers, each one humming with energy. "This is it," Vic said, his voice filled with awe. "If we can overload the core, it'll take the whole stronghold down." "Can you rig it?" Jack asked. "Yeah, but it's going to take time," Vic replied, already moving toward the console. "And I'll need cover." "Carl with me," Jack ordered. "Hold the entry points." As Vic worked, the first wave of Zorvok soldiers arrived, their guttural battle cries echoing through the chamber. Jack and Carl opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkened room. The Zorvok were relentless, their movements almost mechanical in their precision. For everyone they took down, another seemed to take its place. "Vic, how much longer?" Jack called out, his voice strained as he reloaded. 5 minutes, maybe less," Vic shouted back. "Just keep them off me." Carl let out a roar as he charged a group of Zorvok soldiers, his rifle blazing. He was a force of nature, each shot precise, each movement calculated. But even he couldn't hold them forever. "Jack, we've got a problem." Luke's voice broke through the comms, his tone urgent. "They've deployed a heavy unit. It's heading your way." As if on cue, the ground shook, and a massive Zorvok warrior entered the chamber. It towered over its counterparts, its armor glowing with a malevolent energy. The creature's weapon, a massive blade pulsating with green fire, hummed with deadly intent. Jack didn't hesitate. "Carl, focus fire on the big one." "Vic, get that core ready." The battle intensified as the heavy unit charged. Carl met it head-on, his shots barely denting its armor. Jack flanked, his movements quick and precise, aiming for the creature's joints. The Zorvok warrior swung its blade, the arc of energy slicing through the air with a deafening roar. Vic's voice cut through the chaos. "Almost there. Just hold them a little longer." Jack ducked under a sweeping strike, his plasma pistol finding a weak spot in the heavy unit's armor. The creature roared in pain, momentarily staggering. Carl seized the opportunity, slamming a grenade into its exposed joint and diving clear as it detonated. The heavy unit collapsed, its form crumpling under its own weight. "I've got it," Vic shouted, his voice triumphant. "Overload sequence initiated. We've got 2 minutes to clear out before this place goes up." "Move," Jack ordered, grabbing Vic by the arm and pulling him toward the exit. Carl covered their retreat, his rifle blazing as more Zorvok poured into the chamber. The team sprinted through the stronghold, the walls shaking violently as the core's overload sequence reached critical mass. Luke's voice came through the comms, urgent but steady. "I'm clearing a path. Get to the extraction point now." They burst out of the stronghold, just as the first explosion rocked its foundation. The ground beneath them heaved, and Jack could feel the heat of the blast at their backs. Luke's fighter swooped low, its bay doors open. Jump! Luke shouted. Jack didn't hesitate. He leapt into the ship, pulling Vic with him. Carl followed, his massive frame barely fitting through the hatch as Luke pulled up, the stronghold erupting in a massive fireball behind them. As the ship ascended, Jack looked back at the crumbling fortress, a grim satisfaction settling over him. They had done the impossible. They had struck a blow against the Zorvok where no one else could. But he knew the war wasn't over. This was just the beginning.